Hi everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. I'm sitting here with the rather wonderful Tom Holkenborg, otherwise known as Junkie XL. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for coming over.
Thanks for having us. This is an absolutely insane room.
There's a few more.
I know. I want to go and check. He has another room with guitars in it. You know, I'm like jonesing for that. That's amazing. How long have you been here?
In this particular spot, 4 years, and in the US, 17 years now.
Wow. I didn't actually know.
Not
you
as
were
long
here.
as you, but
I was 22. Yeah.
Ooh.
I didn't know you were here. When Hisham and I were first chatting, I assumed, well, when's he going to be back in LA?
I mean, like, there's, you know, it's normal, I think. Like, you know, but the world is so small.
A lot of people think I'm in England.
Yeah, of course. Well, you know, You have an English accent.
I do.
No, but I mean, like, for whatever reason, people still think that I'm touring or whatever. But I did my last gig in 2012, so it's been long gone.
You miss it?
You know, sometimes when I talk about with my assistants about like how it was to tour, and then I just bring up an old video or something, I'm just like, oh, it was great, wasn't it? And then 10 minutes after that, it was like, no, I'm happy where I am right now.
Yeah. Well, there's the glamour of the show, and then there's a glamour maybe of being in Rome or something and having the day off. All of that sounds really good, but then you carry the weight of the responsibilities that you now have, and you're like,
but it's just completely different. I mean, don't forget though, I toured for over 25 years, but most of those 25 years were not glamorous.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I remember staying in Hackney in London when Hackney was not an up-and-coming neighborhood, and you had to step over the druggies and you would get beaten up.
Well, in those days it wasn't Hackney, it was acne.
Yeah, acne. Agony.
Agony, yes.
Yeah, I mean, so the first 10 years were not all that glamorous, and then when things got well with Junkie XL as a touring artist, and then it was like business class flights around the world and 5-star hotels and great clubs and
right.
So I never understood once I got to that point where artists are complaining about touring. It's like, what is there to hate? You know. You fly comfortably. There's like promoters take you out to luxurious dinners. That every night there's like a bunch of people that love to see you play, and then after that they hang out with you and you have a drink or two, and it's like, what is there to hate? You know, it was the most relaxing time period of my life, at least, the whole touring.
And now you're in film with a vengeance.
With a vengeance.
Yeah,
it's great. I mean, like I think I now found out now that I look back, it's like I should never have been an artist. I should never have gone on tour, but I did, and it made me the composer that I am.
Yeah.
But I can tell you now, being a film composer and just working in the studio, it's like I'm a fish in the water. I feel so comfortable, you know, working in this environment. Yes, it's stressful. It's not for everybody, but then at the end of the day, when things get stressful, you know, you step away from it. You just walk outside for 10 minutes and you tell yourself, Tom, it's just a fucking movie, you know, and that calms you down. You're just like, you know what? It's a movie. And obviously, when you work as hard as you can and as good as you can. But when sometimes it gets a little too much, you just got to put it in perspective. You know, you're not saving somebody's life, or you know, or you're not like a fire marshal taking people out of a burning building. You know, it's like champagne problems.
I remember reading George Orwell's Road to Wigan Pier, where he is he poses as a traveling salesman, and this is like, you know, late Victorian England. He goes. Well, after that, he goes up to the north of England and lives with the coal miners' family. And I read that book, and I always think to myself, you know, whatever I do, I'm not like a mile and a half down underground, crawling to a coal face, you know, like chipping coal off. You know, it's music. It's just, you know, we're blessed.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So we're sitting in this room. My gut reaction when I walked in through the door was to see all this incredible equipment. I've seen the videos, obviously. I watch your videos. It would be really amiss of me if we didn't sort of take some time and actually talk about all this incredible gear.
Let's do it.
Okay.
When you look at this, so even though it's a synth, but you see this follows the drawbar of the organ. Yeah. You know, just like...
It's amazing.
So it's still full. So these were the synths that were in between the organs, and then
Right.
and the real synths that like we know today. Even though the sounds that you can make out of this thing is like absolutely fantastic.
It's instant John Carpenter, though, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, like it's immediate. Oh, and the Terminator walks past. It's like all that. It's like classic.
amazing.
Very Blade Runner. So this is typical 70s stuff. This is interesting.
Yeah, what is that?
The Synergy is like one of the earlier FM synthesizers from the late 70s, and it came with a K-Pro computer. You could program the whole synth, super complicated software. I think I made one preset. It took me like a weekend to make one preset. It's like, okay, back to Native Instruments, FM8. It's like so much easier to get sound, But it comes with cartridges with sounds on it. So I have a bunch of these cartridges, and it's a really interesting FM synth, and pretty old.
You have everything going at all times?
Yeah, it's always on.
This is insane. I've never seen one of these.
Yeah, so it comes with built-in presets. Almost sounds like Miami Vice. But yeah, so that's a great FM synth. And then this rack over here, primarily is like samplers and digital synths from the late 80s into the half 90s. This is one of the first synths that I had, the Mirage, which was also the first commercial sampler that came out that ordinary people could afford. There was like Fairlight and Synclavier, which were like million plus. Trevor Horn had one, Kate Bush had one.
Yeah. Whole Hands of Love from Fairlight,
exactly. It wouldn't happen for us, for you and me.
No way.
So then the Mirage came out, and it's expanded. Woo! It has extra memory, I think like a half a second or a second. But complicated box. But yeah, you were able to. I think it's on. So this is I'm playing on this keyboard, but we're hearing actually this thing. Listen to that.
It's amazing.
It's like that low resolution that comes out of it. It's I think it's 8-bit, if I'm not mistaken.
That's insane.
It's cool, huh?
How we know poly?
Yeah, it's a poly synth.
Oh, it's great. It's amazing.
So that's that thing, and then this is like an old analog synth, Oberheim, very analog in sound. This is a modern version of that thing, like 5-6 years later, I think. This is a great box, TG77 Yamaha box, where now FM synthesis and AWM technology was combined. So it's at the same time it's an FM synth, but it also creates synth sounds based on really small little samples that are in memory, PCM samples. There were a lot of synths that started doing that in the 80s. And that's the point where, for instance, Roland had the D50 synthesizer, of which I have here the modular of that thing, which is a D550, and it allowed you to have like a very good sounding strings and then good sounding trumpets, so you could play the final countdown, and then you could play something else, and then the shakuhachi. So everybody was, they would come with boxes like this. It's like, okay, it's heavy, it's bulky, it barely has even presets, and it always sounds very analog. It's like, take it off me. I want like a new digital box with like hundreds of presets and digital sounds. And so here we see like a couple of more Yamaha boxes. This was an interesting synth, the VL1.
Never seen that.
Very interesting, extremely expensive when it came out. I think 10 grand or something, and it says here it's a virtual acoustic tone generator. So it was able to emulate or a string instrument or a brass instrument or a woodwind instrument. and it does it successfully, and it comes with a breath controller. I'm not sure if you've ever seen that. So you put that thing in your mouth, and then you play, and nothing happens. Yeah. And then you blow into it, and then you get that same response as a real instrument. So there, especially in the jazz rock world, people were taking this to town, and they could really, you know how those the first digital saxophones came out, and then the saxophone controller, you could hook it up to a box like this, and then so you played then a saxophone, but then it was like an electric guitar or something, and then 85 everybody was like, "What? It's insane! It's incredible!" or in 1990 or something. Some old Yamaha samplers, next generation.
I didn't realize they made so many. For me, it's like I remember the Mirage. I remember like the S1000. I remember like these. I think we had like an S650 or something. We couldn't afford the 1000.
Yeah, I've got all the Akai's ones. So the other studio that we're going to later, there's like one rack that has everything that Akai ever made, of which technically that was my live rig in the 90s.
I just didn't know there was so many. The fact that you've got 4, 5, 6 different Yamahas here. I didn't realize they ever got that deep into it.
Yeah, they did. They tried, and they never got successful at it. There were other companies that beat them to the punch, like Emulator, Kurzweil, Ensoniq, and Roland. Right. So Roland was probably the most popular commercial sampler. So this was the flagship of that. Over there, we'll later see the S-50, which was the first model that they released. But look at this. I mean, this is like from the 80s, but it's like super fancy. You see that? You go to a mode, and you could just like, okay, I want to do something that is related to my system. I want to see my disk tools, and then, I mean, it's amazing. You know, just like it came with a mouse and like a screen, and you could see what you were doing. And so you were now saved from like tiny little displays where it was impossible to see.
Which is the DX7. Remember that first came out, and the screen's this big and it's that color. Yeah. And you're like, and there's like guys' only job was to program a DX7.
Yeah, I did that too.
You did that?
Yeah, I made sounds for Yamaha back in the 80s. Yeah, and did demos too for Yamaha.
Oh, that's amazing.
And then you see like a bunch of mixers also here. So I actually, because I tried this thing, it's like, how do I get the signal from here into my sequencer? Yeah. And so I tried different things. I tried very expensive mixers, very expensive patch panels. Right. And it all didn't make a difference. The only thing that made a difference was very expensive cabling. So the cabling here is all Mogami cabling, which is quite expensive, but with really good connectors. That made a big difference. But for instance, I use here a very cheap Behringer patch bay. It's only like $100, I think. And I tried a very expensive patch bay, and there was no difference in sound. But cabling, immediately you heard the difference.
Yeah, there's huge long lengths of cabling.
Yeah, because there's like 100 feet going that way, and then it all ends there on the patch panel, and then it goes into the...
I've had the same experience. I remember running a guitar cable like 40 yards or something. It was ridiculously long, and I had a decent-ish cable, and the sound was a little dull, and I was like, I wonder if it's a cable. And we put a Klotz cable in, which is an expensive German cable, and the difference was massive. All the high end came back. Yeah. So
and also, keep in mind that most of these synths have an output of minimum 1 volt. And once you move to, the really old synthesizers like these ones, they can produce an output sometimes up to 2 volts, and then the modular world can go up to 15 volts. So, it's a microphone, because it's like, 10 milliamps a microphone? Everything helps. Connectors, patch panels, DI boxes, like high quality. But since this is like 1-2 volts on average, it's like the patch panels, don't make that much of a difference. And then with the submixer, I settled on this thing, the Ashley, which is a $650 mixer, 700, something like that. And it sounds really good. And I just use like a bunch of those, and then there's like 15 of them to submix all the synths, and then and as you can tell, it's relatively quiet. There's like there's a little bit of this. Yeah, there's a little bit of.
I didn't notice.
Yeah, there's a little bit, but
now that you mention it, I'm thinking about it. When I came in here, I did not think all of his stuff was all powered.
Yeah.
Considering how much equipment you've got, I mean, we pan around. There's a lot of potential hiss that could be coming.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So this synth is. I actually at this point I'm just using it as a MIDI keyboard, right? To play this whole.
Is this Teisco, the Japanese company?
Yeah.
So it's the same company who made those guitars in the 60s.
Yeah. It's a very rare synth, the SX-240. It's pretty good sounding, but I just ran into it for $50. It's like, oh yeah, sure, I'll take it.
It's gorgeous.
But it looks, this looks still.
Now
great.
I've been sort of ignoring it. It's the elephant in the room because this at one stage was the god of everything, and that is
it's right there.
The emulator.
Yeah.
I didn't want to like divert because I know I could spend an hour just. So this was. I remember when this was like you'd see this in photographs in music magazines.
Yeah.
And it was like. Oh.
Yeah, me too. I mean, like, and this thing, it was extremely heavily used by Flood and by Depeche Mode, I remember seeing also because it looks so futuristic. I mean, now it looks like retro in the best way possible. Yeah. But when this thing came out, somewhere in the 80s, you're like, probably you did the same thing. You would go to the local music shop and they had brochures.
Yeah.
That was like the equivalent of internet. So you would take a brochure home with like amazing pictures with lights and of the thing and the menus with. And because I didn't have the money to buy any of this.
Especially, how much was this?
It must have been 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, like back in the day.
Back when that was like buying a really nice car.
And now you can pick them up relatively cheap.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, like it's still $1,500, $2,000, and you might get them in a pretty beat up shape.
Wow.
But these buttons are very easy to actually find.
Okay.
And then this thing right here, which is a print, actually, they make them again. So you can order them, like from some company.
I mean, between this and the DX1 over there, I mean, these were like the DX1 was this mythical thing that
this
only was on big records.
So the DX1 I have on loan from my good friend Hans Zimmer. He had one and. He said, "Well, why don't you take it? It's better. It's going to be of better use in your studio than it is in mine." And I got it, and it was in storage for God knows how many years, and it was like, and so I had it fixed, and it's just such a wonderful box. And I love FM synthesis, and that actually is way easier to program on that thing because everything is visualized, and it's not like a tiny little screen with like menus. It's all there. So it's really great. So I use this thing to resample my analog synths, and so this was a digital sampler, but with an analog filter and amplifying circuit in it, and that made it special. Obviously, with the nice little discs in the machine room, there's like thousands of discs that go in here. I bought this thing as a fixer-upper in. I think 92 or 93.
How much was it then?
Not much, like 200. These came down like the price drastically because now this thing had to compete with a small little module like this that had 15 times the memory of this or 20 times the memory. Yeah. It had modern ways of storage.
But I remember you'd read about Depeche Mode and you'd ask how they got a sound, and they would talk about how they sampled like breaking glass and then slowed it down. So it was like,
I mean, like these guys were super creative with it, and I actually have all the Daniel Miller sounds, or I think Daniel Miller for Depeche Mode. You can buy it for $10 online, and you play it. But there's nothing you can do with it because they're copyright protected. But you play and it's like, that's like like personal Jesus. This is like enjoy. Oh shit, this is enjoy the silence. There's nothing you can do with it, and it sounds so gorgeous. And you want to use it in a track, but you just can't. But you just pay basically $10 to gig out to gig out.
It's probably worth the $10.
Oh, for sure. $100 would be worth it. But you can't use it. But it's really great. I'm not sure what I have loaded. I think it's like So I basically sample any synth here. I'll just stick it in and record like a straight saw wave. But because now it's sampled, you get a little bit of sample rate reduction, but in a really good way.
Yeah.
And then the analog filter that sits on top. And what's really cool is that this thing has 8 outputs, and they're all connected to the mixer. And each voice you play is a unique voice port in these synths. And that's very typical for old synths and old samplers. Like later on, they figured out how to do it. Like this generation, you basically play a chord, and there's one output that brings you the chord. But back in the day, they haven't quite figured it out. So if you bought an emulator, technically, that is 8 voice. Inside there's 8 emulators layered on top of each other with voice boards.
Wow.
So each note you pick is a separate emulator that makes that sound. And each voice sounds slightly different. And that also brings the characteristics. And then if you play an 8-note chord, you have 8 different outputs that deliver one voice. So you can pan the panorama of those outputs, and you have a super stereo environment where the low note is on the left and the highest note is in the middle, and then the mid note is on the right. And then you play the chord again, and then it's shuffled, and now it's different. So you get this really, and you can't even mimic this with modern synths. Like you couldn't even do it. Even with the plugin, like how would you do it? That you have to actually, you have to be conscious of what you're doing. You have 8 instances of the same synthesizer, and one note is just being played by one instance, and then you do the panning, and then you get it. But then you have to randomize the notes too. But within one instance of the plugin, you couldn't do what a box like this does. And this was technically, that's the only way that they could do it. And then now, it's funny.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. I mean, to me, this is between this, a Fairlight. Well, do you have a Fairlight?
No. No. I'll tell you why. Like, so the Fairlight and the Synclavier are you can still get them, previously used, but the Fairlight or Synclavier will come with a rack this tall, with like voice boards and processing in it. And the amount of heat that it generates and the amount of power that it needs is insane. Yeah. And once the system breaks down, you're just relying on potentially a spare part that comes up on eBay, because that technology is not around anymore. Wow. So that's especially because just of that, I applaud the original designers of synths like this, the Roland synths, the Moog synthesizers, the Buchla synthesizers, because they what they would do before they designed the synth, they would check what parts were available for the US Army, because those things would never disappear. So there's the chip manufacturers, Texas Instruments, for instance, they have released a bunch of different types of chips. And once the US Army started adapting that in their gear, you were assured that that piece of chip would be made for the next 50 years at least to
That's
come.
Great.
The same as with tubes. Right. Like if it wasn't for the Army, a lot of these tubes for guitar amps would not be available at this point.
Well, that was the U-47. The tube comes from a radio, a German radio.
Yeah.
And at the end of the war, they had so many of them. Even though they weren't making them, they didn't think it was going to be a problem. And then one day they woke up and ran out of them. Yeah. Crazy. So look, this is insane. I don't know where to begin on this.
Well, actually, so
I'm assuming this is custom made, bearing in mind it has your name.
Well, no, it's actually some of them are. So these are built by various different companies, and I always give a shout out to these companies because they're, some of them are so incredibly small. Like Corsynth is a very small company from Spain. Pablo, I think his name is, and it's just him and one other guy, and they make it. Analog Craftsman, Synthesizer.com is actually, it's not a big company, but in the modular world, it's a bigger company, and I think they're Texas based. So there's a lot of modules from them in here. Cynthia, this is like a woman from LA that made this oscillator. So there's all these different brands, and 15 of them. There's one I wanted to call out is Moon. Gert, he's from Germany. Incredible guy. So yeah, this is what they make, and then you order something, you have to pay in full, and then you have to wait like anywhere between 5 and just like 5 weeks to like a year until you get it. It's all made on order, and then they call you and it's like, oh, since we're putting this thing together, you have any wishes? You want to boost up the filter gain? You want to have a hotter output? Do you want like an extra input? Or and you just go back and forth, and you get like really cool stuff. But the way that you should look at this is. It's basically what any synth is that you've seen here, or any plug-in synth, but instead of having everything pre-wired on the back end, it's now not wired at all. And you need to wire everything on the front end.
Wow.
And it takes a long time to build patches, like really long time. But
document them?
No. Just record everything. Everything that you do needs to be recorded. Yeah. But if you have a small setup, like 2-3 modules, and you have a sound that you're happy with, yes, you can take a picture of it.
Right.
But when this whole wall is like being patched, and there's like one of the videos I did was to put this whole thing to work in a live performance, and it took me a week to patch the whole thing, and then practice it. Because God knows what you did, you know what I mean. And then you do like a live performance with it, and but it takes forever, and it's impossible to to document it like really, because there's no presets, there's no going back. And sometimes you have a patch that is great, and then you start like playing around and experimenting, and then out of the blue, it's like House of Cards. It just all falls apart and it's gone. And there's no way you can get it back, and it's like, I just might as well start over. And that's why you have to record everything.
Always be recording.
So you have it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's huge. Yeah, that's amazing. That's a song on its own.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just one saw wave going in, I mean, really great. Also, when you go.
Well, hopefully we're getting enough of this on the lapel mics.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's big, huh?
It's insane.
But the low end that comes out of these boxes is insane. And what's really great with these mixers too is that up to here, this is like 0 dB. This is plus 10. This is plus 20. And this is plus 50. And the same on the output. So with this thing, I'm actually able, and that's why I have a limiter on the back end before it goes into the mixer, because you can blow up your mixer. This thing can generate like 15-20 volts on its output easily. Wow. And the cool thing in the modular world is that you can run it into this channel first, or like, just hypothetically, I'm just putting it in this channel, and take the output of this thing and just stick it in here. Okay. So the distortion that it brings is really it's amazing. Awesome. And then it has really cool switches like negative kill. So basically, so if you have a sine wave, it cuts everything below the zero. So you just have the positive signal. So you could really play with sounds like an incredible way. So what I do a lot actually is run stuff back from Cubase through both the modulars, whether it's this system or that system over there. Yep. I just do like sound processing on guitars or drums or the orchestra, for instance. Like it's fascinating to do that.
I'd love to just be a fly on the wall while you're doing that. That'd be insane.
But I mean, literally patching something up with this thing is like watching the grass grow. It's like it goes incredibly slow.
Yeah.
But it's just so much fun. And this is This format is called 5U, so it's based on what Moog intended in the 60s, 70s. And
hence the look, because it really
everybody that walks in here thinks like, oh, this is a Moog system. It's not. A Moog system of this size, you would talk about millions, and it's not. I don't need it. It's like really hard to get, and it's super expensive. And actually, the 5-year world is relatively cheap. So even though this looks like extremely impressive, but you could build for a few $1,000s. You can build like a very impressive setup in the 5-year world. Now the Eurorack world, because it's new and it has a lot of digital features and some modules are actually complete computers, is a more expensive environment. But this is relatively cheap. You should compare this to like a very decent Marshall amp with no pre-gain, with no effects, just an old school or an AC30 original Fox, and just turn up the volume, and then you have a simple pedal like a Big Muff, and then there you go on a decent Gibson guitar. That's what this is. This is like, Adrian Ballou or just like multi-effectors and it's just Fripp. Like Fripp or just. So let's walk over here. This is the Eurorack wall, which looks more modern and more impressive to the outside eye. I would say that the modules fall apart in like two different types. So types like this and this over there, very much comparable to what we saw on that wall. Very decent oscillators, beautiful big sound. But then you have things like this and something like this, or something like the Control Forge, or this computer. This is like a complete computer, this module. It also has like so many layers of prints behind it.
Who's that? Maybe?
Yeah, this one over here. It's like a supercomputer. What you can do with it. So it's way smaller in size than the big wall. I think that's one of the reasons why also this is more popular. Not only because it's more modern sounding, but who has space to do that? Like barely anybody. So that's why that is not as popular. But it's really great. So this is another wall that I spend a good amount of time on. I have like I call Sunday like modular Sunday. So I don't have to compose music for a film. I could just walk around here in my pajamas like all day and just like making sounds, and I record everything in, and then long live the assistants. On Monday morning, somebody's going to chop that up and file it away in the proper folders.
Nice.
So it's
Eric, you like that idea?
So here we have like a couple of classic drum computers. I have a bunch more in the other. That's the RX5, I think.
That's RX7.
The 7. Yeah.
I remember this so well. We didn't have the RX7. What was the sort of smaller version they brought out?
Oh, you had the the RX7. The RX5 is the biggest one, and then you had the RX21.
It must be the 21.
And that was more like this size. Or potentially this size.
These were just game changing.
Yeah.
I mean, they actually sounded like drums for the first time.
Almost.
Yeah. But it went from being like poof, pss, poof, psh, to something going boom. You're like, whoa.
I know.
I
know. I had that actually when this thing came out, which is the Oberheim drum computer. I've got the bigger one on the other side. This one sounded almost like a real disco kit. You know what I mean? Like completely dry.
Yeah.
You know, like a disco drum.
You should sample that. That was good.
I think we talked about this earlier. The PS31 and the 33, incredible. And this thing is now worth close to £50,000 if you can find it, because there's only 5 working machines at this point in the world. And this is actually, it looks impressive, but believe me, it's actually not a great sounding synth. But it was...
What he's trying to do is buy the other ones. Yeah, they're not very good.
don't look for it. But actually what they did, and that's really unique, is and that's why this thing is so bulky. This synth is actually 48 voice polyphonic. And that in 1977. 76 or 78 or something.
Yeah, it was insane.
So each voice has its own voice port, and if you open this thing up, it's just like you're just like, whoa, so much electronica in there. And yeah. I guess one synth is not hooked up. Let's make sure the DX1 is when we go there.
I'm so excited by this. So this was like, how much were these? Because I remember a DX7 was.
I don't know. This was an expensive.
Really expensive.
Yeah, I think even back in the day, it must have been 10,000-15,000 or something.
Yeah. Pounds.
It's impossible to lift. Like I said, I got this on loan from Mr. Zimmer. But I mean, it's great to make sounds in this, and like I said, the display is still kind of crappy. Yeah. But everything is like right here, so you could switch the algorithm you wanna edit, or the operator you wanna edit, and then you have immediately information here. You can immediately press a parameter, and then just like with data entry, you can immediately change it. So it was very impressive, whereas the other DX synths didn't have that option, and I still use it today. It's just like such a wonderful box, and I just hope that Mr. Zimmer is going to forget that he loaned that thing to me in the first place. So,
you want us to edit that out? What I remember of our DX7 is we used to put it through pedals.
Yes,
because it was like everything was so clean.
Yeah.
But you put it through a pedal and it was amazing. So it was always distortion pedals and chorus pedals and flanges and stuff.
Yeah, well, the cool thing is, like, I had an issue with this week. Let's just see if I can edit it. So if we were to go to a different algorithm. That's where you can start. That's a good starting point to start racking your sound like beyond imagination. And then when you start like, because the algorithms, the way that they were designed is like, if you wanted a certain type of instrument, let's say an organ or a bell or a guitar or a piano, according to the theory, you would go to a certain algorithm and that would give you the best opportunity to mimic that instrument. That's where it all came from. And there was this French scientist, his name was Fourier, who came up with FM synthesis, and that's why it was called the Fourier analysis. And so he came up with the FM synth like 150 years, 100 years before the first FM synth, and he saw that as the true theory to create sound. I don't know the details exactly, but that's kind of what it is. And so this was a guide to create natural sounds, but obviously everybody in the experimental world is like, what does the algorithm do on the piano? And then it starts turning into like a horror sound or terrible distortion. And then we were just like, that's great, you know. And so a lot of the noises that I make with this thing is like, for a lot of people when they play it, you can't play it. It's just like, really weird sounds, but great for film scoring. You could not release that on a CD. People would not buy it. But in a film, it's like great. So that's one of the reasons why I love film scoring so much, that I can make music that would never sell on the CD. It's just like pure noise, and it's great in a theater when you watch a film.
Now you're in Cubase. Is that your main?
Now I am. Yeah, I've worked with every program on the planet.
What were you before then?
I was Pro Tools before that. I was Logic before that. For me, at this point, the sound of Cubase is superior to anything out there.
So Juno 60?
Juno 60, I've got two of them. One is over there with the Juno 6. This is technically Juno 6. It was called 60 because it has like memory locations, which that's the only difference. But I just love this synth so much. It sounds really punchy, more punchy than anything else that Roland has ever released. A lot of attack, which is great for sequence bass lines that need to sound like a little rougher. That's what I mean with it. like very attack.
yeah.
If you try to do that on a Jupiter-8 or a Jupiter-6, it's not going to work.
Right.
It's more mellow. Where this is like a it can be really
Really get that
like that
aggression. Yeah.
So which is really cool, especially when you. Let's see if we put the radiator on. That's really cool with that
So much fun.
Yeah, and also I had all these old synths retrofitted with MIDI. So because all these
that would have been CV Gate, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and actually I'm going to grab that thing. Here we go.
Oh God, I remember those.
So this was the old way of syncing this. So this would then go into the keyboard, and then with MIDI you could communicate it with other things. I have an even older version of this for the Jupiter, which is in the other studio, which is a really cool box. But yeah, you would never use that again. That's just like it's great.
It looks great. You've got it.
It looks great. It's just like great in an interview like this. But would you actually practically use this nowadays? Not really.
Probably not really. And then what about the Prophet? Is this new or just in the
Yeah, that's brand new.
Okay, I was about to say.
So Dave Smith is the company and the designer of this thing. Dave Smith, if I'm not mistaken, he was the lead synth designer for Prophet in their heydays, the Prophet 5, the Prophet 8. And he's now started a company basically making analog synths, but with all the benefits of the digital world. MIDI controllers, presets, effect machines. And so he's been making a new Prophet. He's been making a new Oberheim, which is a copy of the OB6 right there, which is at the shop. Because,
Who fixes your keyboards?
His name is Chris Ashbourne.
Right.
He's LA-based.
Great.
I think he's in his 50s. His knowledge about analog synths is incredible. He comes down here like every now and then, and then he plays something. He's like, oh, and then he just opens the hood and it's like chip, 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 close, fine. Yeah, and then I mean, usually what goes wrong with these old synths is that or capacitors dry out, or when switching on, you blow up one of the smaller transistors. It's like, or you leave them on too long, or you left them off too long. it's either or. So he always comes out and then he just fixes it, just like really quick.
That's amazing. Amazing.
And then here we have a Jupiter-4. Which is it's a really great sounding box.
Yeah.
So that came out obviously before.
That's in like mint
Jupiter
condition.
6 and 8. Yeah,
it's in mint condition.
Yeah, I got this is one of the later buys. This is not one of the things that was from the 80s.
Yeah.
This I bought a couple of years ago from somebody in Japan. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but anything you buy from Japan will arrive in absolute pristine quality. Like it looks like it's just new. You can actually buy in Japan a DX7 from the box, unopened. People would buy that stuff, store it for 30, 40 years, and then sell it in immaculate condition.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, this looks brand new.
Yeah. It's not. But
It looks like it just was screen printed on that yesterday.
Yeah. But that's really the beauty of eBay Japan,
Right.
or Japanese sellers. Like they will. It's just their honor. They will not sell stuff that is not right. And if they sell stuff that Americans, Europeans are just like, oh, not tested, sold as is.
Yeah.
You will hardly find that in Japan. And even if there's a scratch on there will be like 10,000 apologies that there's a scratch on there.
Ow.
And I'm just like, hey, isn't this thing is like 50 years old? It's like, isn't normal that there's a scratch on there?
Yeah.
But yeah, so very, very Japanese, lovely for us.
Absolutely. What's the Chroma Polaris II?
The Chroma Polaris is also like, I think early 80s, and I think it was owned by Fender, actually, Chroma. And it was their approach to build a synthesizer. They actually had
it's got a Fender logo on the back.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
you're right. Wow.
So they had a synth that was way bigger, called the Chroma. It's like separate keyboards and a separate unit and a unit on top. Very expensive if you can find it. Not necessarily worth the money. This pretty much has a similar sound, not exactly the same, but similar, but way more user-friendly with presets and.
I love all these down here. There's a TR-09.
Yeah, so these are all the remakes from.
Oh, those are remakes?
Yeah. So Roland.
Oh, yeah, because they were much bigger.
Yeah. I have the.
I was like, my memory. I was like, oh, that looks so much smaller. I realized.
Yeah. No, the 808 is like. And the 909. I have them both. But they're old and they're not. Necessarily that great sounding in the modern world.
Sure.
So I did a really good job modeling that. But I've sampled all the drum machines that I have to death to get all these really good sounds out of it. And so if they die, it's not the worst thing on the planet. But Roland did an excellent job just like remodeling all these old boxes, and they're so cheap. It's like almost everybody can afford one. They start as low as $200 and they go up to $450.
Do you think? I was just thinking to myself, this is quite European because Oberheims were barely in Europe, were they?
Yeah.
For us, it was all Yamaha and Roland.
Roland, and Korg.
And Korg, yeah. Korg by late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
I mean, when the M1 came out, it just changed the world.
Well, but
that was an insane keyboard.
Yeah, and Korg changed my world a little earlier when the MS-10 came out. Right. It was like late 70s. It became the Donald Fagen synthesizer.
Yeah.
Steely Dan, that sound. But it's super raw in nature, and I use them during live performances. We'll see when we go to the other side. I got 10 of them or 12.
Oh, wow.
Because they broke down, and it was so essential to my live setup. I used 2 always. So I needed to have backup always, and I would die always, like at random moments.
But that makes sense. I went to go and see. I'm blanking on the guitar player's name. Derek Trucks, and he uses the Fender 410 Super Reverbs.
Yeah,
and he has 2 on stage. And I was like, how come you have 2? He goes, oh, this is going to stop halfway through the show.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? He goes, because they're playing outdoor things. He goes, yeah, the power from the generators fluctuates so much that it always blows up the input transformers.
Oh, wow.
Things. And good enough, halfway through the set, silence. He walks over, plugs in, flips the standby, carries on playing. They just know, there's an inevitability. Yeah, with this stuff.
They're great apps, though.
Oh, amazing.
I was looking for one this weekend. The super reverb.
Yeah, for me, they're like the Roy Buchanan kind of super crystal clean, like ear piercing, like bright Telecaster sound.
And what's interesting, when I was looking for that amp, then I read an article. It's like, when you can't find the super reverb, look for the Bandmaster.
Right.
And I'd never heard of the Bandmaster. And then I Googled that. It kind of looks similar.
Yeah.
It almost looks like a Bassman, the Bandmaster.
Yeah.
And did you know of that amp?
Yeah, I did. I think back in the day, I went through a lot of different Fender amps.
Is it good, the Bandmaster?
Oh yeah, they're all fantastic. I think for me, the utilitarian is the Deluxe 65. Yeah. That's that little Deluxe amp is on so many records. Between that and I actually like AC15s more than I like AC30s. Yeah. Especially the old ones that stand up, the tall ones.
Yeah.
And then a Marshall and then it's all. But we talked about earlier. The Laney's my mythical amp. They come up every now and then. And there was one guy in Venice, has a used shop, has 2 in the store, wouldn't sell them. Like he knew. When he came in, I was like, and he's like, they're not for sale. I'm like, yeah.
Crap.
Maybe with a massive check. But.
So here we have a new Minimoog. Not necessarily special, except for the fact that it's an amazing keyboard. But it's just a new one. Yeah. This one is cool. This is the sequential circuit Prophet T8. So the Prophet 5 was the most famous one, but the T8 not so much. But it's a bigger keyboard.
How old is this?
I have to Google, but I think it's 1980 or 1979.
Again, that's mint.
Yeah, So this is also another one that I bought 6 years ago, I think 6-7 years ago. And so besides the stuff that happens on eBay, there's a whole circuit of people that buy and sell and distribute. So I know a couple of good people here in LA that would always send me an email. It's like, so the guy that I bought it from, actually, he bought a whole studio that went down. And so he bought it in an auction, just like the whole studio, like all the gear, all the synths, all the guitars, all the amps. Wow. And he sent me an email. It's like, hey, I bought the whole thing for this much. Wow. You know, if you want it, I can give you a really good deal on this. I think market value on this is like probably 10K or 12K, and he sold me like way underpriced.
I mean, it looks like the kind of thing I could understand. I just like the big,
exactly.
Big knobs and the,
but I mean that's really what analog synths are. I mean, like what you see is what you get.
Yeah,
you know?
I love that.
So this is the first Roland sampler that came out. Well, I think it was first the S10 and then it was the S50. This is the S50, and it also came with like a little screen, and you could hook up a mouse and a data tablet to draw.
That's from the period.
Yeah. I mean, this looks exceptionally mint. Again.
I thought that was new.
No, this is also, I bought the tablet from Japan, and it's like brand new, like new in box. This keyboard was mine, so I bought this when just like a year or 2 years after it came out.
Bought this new and then ended up buying the
tablet. Because at the time the tablet and the screen and the extra mouse was so expensive.
I was going to say
very expensive. So the keyboard itself was doable. Was I think 2,500. But then if you wanted that, was like another 500. And then
I didn't know anybody had any of the extra stuff.
No,
you just got the sounds. You were happy. I'm good.
Exactly. And this used to work with a floppy drive. So here so this is an external.
The
USB to floppy, and but it's funny, you know, like say doesn't matter. I switched this on, so now it's going to read the system from the USB stick. Check this out. This is funny. There we go. Now loading. Here, it's counting down from 70 to 0. It's a USB stick. You know, the system that it needs to load. It's only like a quarter megabyte or something, but it takes like over a minute now loading. It's like insane, you know. Like it can't do it any faster.
So that's it. It's as good as you're going to get. All right. So now we're in a world where I'm very excited about this.
Jupiter-8.
I mean, there was a kid I knew.
What was your introduction with the Jupiter-8? Was there a particular artist? I know mine.
What's yours?
Howard Jones.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. Yeah. Howard Jones. I think just in general in England, it was like it wasn't affordable, but it was what I mean is it was like
expensive.
It was expensive. What I mean, but you could go into a music store and they had one.
You could play it.
Yeah, you couldn't do that with the emulator. You couldn't do it with Synclave. You couldn't do it with a Fairlight. You couldn't do it with the DX1.
No.
But you could walk into your local music store if it was a decent one and they had one.
Yeah.
And you know, a really good keyboard player would come in and and you'd just be like, wow, and it sends shivers down your spine.
The mixing thing with film is different because you have technically 3 massive speakers behind the screen.
Yeah.
You have the Dolby Curve.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know how the Dolby Curve works.
Yes.
It basically rolls off just like a certain dB per octave after like 5-6K, it just goes down. So if you start boosting something at 12K or 13K, you're never going to hear it. Yeah. But you still need to preempt with your mixing. So I need to mix relatively brighter than you would actually hear in the theater to deal with the screen and to deal with the curve. But also, you know, when you're sitting in a theater, you know, you're sitting pretty far away from the speakers. So that always needs to be a reference, like if a mix sounds tight. But I actually used to do that in the past as well when I did my dance records, because my stuff would get played in clubs. Yeah. So it needed to sound really good in a reverby environment, and that's also why I don't treat my room. Yeah. It's actually a terrible sounding room, but if I can make it sound really good in here, like it translates like so easily into a theater or any other stereo system.
Yeah.
I used to mix in the past in perfectly treated rooms, And the mix would always sound great in that room, but never sounded great anywhere else. That's why, you know, I don't. And
well, you know this room.
Also, but the composer's room is the worst to mix. I mean, look at the screens. Look at the look at the reflections of all the gear, and it's terrible. But yet at the same time, I get things to sound like really good, and I need to listen at a relatively loud volume. Whereas
I think sorry to interrupt you, but I think another thing that's really, really important is when I'm given stuff to mix that's been composed and produced and written by one person, I'm going to spend, let's say I got a day to mix a song, I'm going to spend 3/4 of the day trying to get back to the place that you left it at.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot more sense, especially with the technology available, that you mix your own stuff.
Well, it's also so a lot of pre-mixing is actually done in a template the way that I have my template built. So everything is loaded at all times. It gets processed at all times.
Sure.
So what comes out of it almost sounds like finished product, and then we print stamps with all the processing on it. Yep. So what I would give to a mixer if I were to work with another mixer, but I do it myself, is like you get all the stamps, and if you play it at Unity, that's where I left the mix at. Yeah. And then somebody would take it from there and just make it better. Which
is possibly more volume automation at that point.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, all the creative mixing, just destroying a sound, for instance, like happens on the level of writing the music.
Sure.
And when it comes to mixing, it's actually more, you know, safe, proper mixing, like a little bit of compression, a little bit of limiting, a little bit of EQ, like correcting equalization, let's put it that way, corrective equalization.
The way it used to be.
What it used to be. And the way, if I write a piece of music, then it's like plus 30 dB here and just shelf, you do really crazy stuff because you use EQ now as a sound tool or a multi-band compression as a sound tool.
Yeah.
And especially love the Fab filter for that, where you use the expansion and you have only one band and you can crank it up like plus 40 dB. You get really weird sucking effects, which is great musically, but you don't want to do that in a final mix because it's destroying everything, obviously.
Yeah. But well, I mean, if it works, if it sounds good, it sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
You want to walk to the other side?
Yeah, let's do it.
There's your JC.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, they're beautiful. I mean, the distortion on them is probably the worst distortion ever made. It's just like, but it's fun to use.
So now I see one of my assistants has been actually playing the guitar. So it's
you can tell because you would never use it.
I would never use the distortion in the room.
And well, is this you though? Because I always thought the secret was to use the vibe.
Well, actually the amp sounds way better with the chorus off, but the chorus has a really nice effect to it. Yeah. Also, it seems to turn the amp into a stereo amp.
Yes, because it's probably flowing the phase out. Yeah, it's probably like doing that. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, this has been. I think there's two settings I love, which was like speed at maximum and depth barely on. Or depth really, really high
and then very
speed slow. Yeah. And anything in between is kind of irrelevant, but yeah. But I always think it was the vibe with the speed up and the depth down. I think. Yeah. But that was instant like John McGee. You had that Susie and the Banshees, Cure.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. But a lot of the guys like the Bauhaus and those bands that I grew up listening to and loving the guitar stuff were using the crappiest gear.
Yeah.
In fact, Daniel still uses the same amp that he used, with the Bauhaus, and it's a HH IC100, and it's this silver ugly transistor amp that just goes distorts the worst ever. But when he plays through it, it's the Bauhaus. Yeah. You're like, or Love and Rockets. It just sounds amazing. So,
it's kind of like with the Yamaha amps. A very unsuccessful period in the Yamaha history. Yeah, but then Mike Stern plays on Yamaha amps. And when he plays, it sounds great. Anybody else that plays on that, it sounds like crap.
Like, what's his name? The jazz guitar player plays the foot-mounted Roland. You remember Andy Summers did that as well, the guitar synth.
The
GR series. I mean, it's like...
I've got two of them.
Oh, you have? I have the blue one, the one I'm thinking of, yeah?
That's the one I don't have. I have the oldest one.
Which one's the oldest one?
Follow me.
Because then there was the one that Andy Summers played that was like a Les Paul-ish guitar.
Yeah.
And then there was the one with the handle on it. Hey.
This.
I remember that one.
That's the first one they made.
Oh, yeah.
Hold this thing. It's like a fucking block of concrete.
God bless it.
And it has no plug out, so the multi goes in.
Oh yeah.
Here, and then it goes into the back of this thing.
That's insane.
But it sounds really good.
Yeah, I remember these. I remember when these were new. Oh.
The action on that thing is incredible, huh?
Yeah, it's great. It's like Alan Holdsworth kind of whizzing around on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I remember that one. And then there was the one that was kind of like the natural wood finish that had the twin horns.
Yeah.
And then there was the one with
the handle. Jan Akkerman used to play that thing.
Yeah,
the Dutch guitar player.
Yeah, I remember.
It was a GR300.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
With the
huge thing.
The big paddle board.
So there was that one, then there was the blue one. Was it 300?
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
So that's one of the Ibanez guitars I was talking about. It's such an incredible. I mean,
It looks like the Les Paul guitar.
Yeah.
And Les Paul recording. He put the pickups
but
like that.
it was a copy.
Oh, great. That's fantastic. Made in Japan. Gorgeous.
Yeah, they were on a roll.
Yeah, I mean, they had something to prove. they were like, we're going to prove that we can do this too.
And they did.
And they did, yeah, exactly. Now everybody's waking up and realizing it.
So this is one of the racks that I used for my live gigs. Just like a bunch of synths in it. The MKS80 with the controller. This I didn't use. These are like preset things. I started buying these things when I got into making music for commercials, and I needed quick like a synth sound that was right. You know, it's super crappy sounding.
Yeah.
But like thousands of sounds on there. So this was the 909 808 that I used, which was made by Novation.
I remember that. Yeah.
Pretty good 19-inch box. I remember these, the DX racks.
I do.
Yeah. So I didn't have this back in the day. I didn't. I bought this 2 years ago for $125.
Probably don't know what it was.
And it works. It's totally fine. And I have like an editor for it, which is a hardware editor made by a guy in Argentina. And I just hook it up, and I can just basically program a synth sound, unplug it, go to the next one.
That's amazing.
It's really fun.
Absolutely amazing.
And this was their first sampler made by Yamaha. With an operating system from hell, the TX16W, like impossible to program.
Never even seen that.
Yeah, that was the first sampler that they had, 86, 87, I think.
Oh, M1.
Yeah, so the M1 is a rack. Yeah, it's a rack.
Remember that? And I remember the A1 too.
Yeah. Yeah, this was expensive when it came out, the
Yeah.
A1, right? Couple of grand, probably.
Yeah, I mean, even this was out of my range. JD 1080. I remember when those came out. I was like, "Woo, you got a 1080?"
Yeah.
I mean, they've always catered to that market. Though they've always been managed to make something. And what about that?
Oh, that's 8 DX7s in one.
I've never even seen that.
Yep.
TX802.
Yep.
Yep. No, I've never even seen that.
Did you know the first digital mixer that they released, DMP4?
Yeah,
it was a four-channel digital.
Yeah.
It was like this big with like 4 faders on it and a master section. There's some more old gear here.
SP1200. Wow. This is another one of those mythical beasts.
Yeah, and there are all the floppies of the sounds that I made for it. So I've sampled like a lot of my drum computers for that, and it just sounds like really, really, really fantastic.
That's amazing.
So the trick with this thing is that you pitch up the sound 1 octave.
Yeah.
You sample it, and then you pitch it down 1 octave in this thing, and you get the grain. That's what all the hip hop producers did, and you technically have more memory.
Right.
Right, because a pitched up sample is like, and then you pitch it down, it's like, so it takes you save memory time. So it all came from not having the real deal.
Yeah, necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and so a bunch of the Korgs I have here. This is the vocoder, which is a pretty amazing classic one. MS-10. This is a reissue of the MS-20. Very good, 100% analog.
Nice. I never use this.
This is the promer, so you can make your own EPROMs.
Right.
And the EPROMs will then go into that drum computer over there. So it's cool when you open it up. So on movies that I work on, I did it a lot on Deadpool, where I basically sampled all these drum computers and made my own EPROM and even acoustic drum kits. Now these are the sound chips right there. So you can burn your own sound chips on that thing and just like put them in.
That's amazing. That's it. It says hi-hat, DX snare.
Yeah, exactly.
DX crash. It's amazing.
You just make them yourself and you just put them in.
That's incredible.
Well, this is still like somewhat an expensive box if you can find it.
I have never. This is the first time I've ever seen one in the flesh.
Yeah, also early '80s.
I mean,
80 something.
There wasn't. I don't know what it was like in the Netherlands, but we didn't see much Oberheim stuff. It was only like a couple of really expensive stores in London maybe would stock it.
Yeah, I worked with somebody for years who had one, and I was able to borrow it. Right. So that's how I know that. So yeah, one of the 20 drum kits that I have in here, I just put new skins on.
Nice. Love Gretsch shells.
Huh?
I love Gretsch shells. Yeah, for me it's Gretsch shells and then Ludwig snares.
Yeah.
I still love the Ludwig snares. Yeah. It's something when you hear a Superphonic or a Black Beauty, it just sounds like a record. Yeah. Because so many of the guys girls we grew up listening to played that snare drum. Yeah. And invariably, if I go to a live show and I love the snare sound, I'll go up on stage and
I mean, like I'm pretty covered when it comes to drum kits and stuff like that. But if I need something special, I just go to the drum doctor. I'm sure you know him.
Yeah, right? he's amazing. Ross is great.
Incredible. Like,
and probably for you don't need the familiarity. You're probably not looking for the snare sound that everybody else uses.
No, but I mean, like for instance, he has great timpanis. He has great Surdos, but he also has classic drum kits, just like great kits from the 50s and 60s, and he knows how to tune them and put the right skins on them, and so if you want something special, it's great. But if you want like a modern drum sound, like a DW drum kit, just like he has them, but I would not.
He has that one Gretsch kit, the sort of natural mahogany one.
Yeah.
That's like the one he goes, oh yeah, that was on, and he names off like all the biggest albums of the last 30 years, and it's like that exact drum kit. Yeah, which is great because if you're coming into town, you're like, oh, I want the Nevermind drum sound. He'll be like, well, it's this snare and this drum kit. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I was wondering that because I just got this skin. Like I said, I put new skins on, but I'm not sure. Shall I put a hole in it or not? Or
depends on what you're going to end up with. I mean,
I'm actually going to record something relatively soon. That's why I put this kit together that is kind of like buzzy in nature. Just like I like the buzzy quality. I never tape it.
Yeah,
so
me too.
Or I tune it a certain way so it just drops down, like releasing one of the angles on this side or the skin below, like a fifth lower or a fourth lower, and then just like with the tune down. I need to record something that's like sounds like in the 60s. So
I personally wouldn't put a hole in it.
No hole in it.
I wouldn't. I feel like if you're going to get this, you're going to get that air. I mean, I feel like we have so many tools that we talked about earlier where if you did want to add a little bit more snap back into it, you could just put a little bit of that in. Yeah. But you're never going to get that bottom air in a room sound unless you've got, Yeah,
because I'm gonna record this in a different studio. But
it's not even Bonham; it's all the jazz guys, everything. Yeah, Bonham's the catchphrase everybody uses, but all of the great jazz guys. There was no holes, and it wasn't until Revolver, I think, that they started sticking mics inside of kick drums.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
But also, drums back in the day was basically you just put like a room mic up, and then you see what you're missing, and then it was usually like a little bit for the snare and hi-hat, and then one for the kick, and then two overheads, right? That was like the whole drum sound.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time it was the three mic, the equilateral triangle, so it was all in phase. So you had one down here, one above the floor, and one over there, and they're all basically the same distance away from each other. So phase-wise, if you put that, because you were forced to either put it onto one or two tracks. If you're lucky, two tracks. I mean, Shelley Ackers told me when he did Music from the Big Pink, the band album, which is a masterpiece, all of the drums are on one track with the vocal. Yeah. Because when Levon was singing, he was playing drums. And they spent ages trying to figure out how to separate the vocals from the drums. And they just gave up and just blended it. So they took the probably three mics on the drum kit with the vocal on the console and then just bounced it to a track. Yeah. There was no it was, and it was obviously out of necessity. But so I think the rooms that you get to play with, you get to go into these big rooms. I would say I'd be more about getting the ambience of the room and worrying less about the close mics.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A dead kick in that room, you're going to have, it's going to be like thud, stang, thud, stang, and the cymbals will be psh, and you'll just have this dead thuddy kick.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I personally like not taking a hole in it. I'm sure lots of drummers will completely disagree with me because they always do.
Well, especially when it comes to metal, because they want like the. Yeah. This is cool. It's out. Old
it's gorgeous. Gorgeous. You got a small Arturia.
Yeah, that's a nuisance, which is absolutely fantastic. Completely analog Arturia. They've been known for releasing really great synths.
French company, good guys.
Plug-in synths, and they released the Mini Brute, which is over there. And this is the Maxi Brute.
Never seen this.
Absolutely fantastic. Absolutely
good
fantastic
company.
synth.
They were good to us when we first started our channel. I think they were the first people that had ever like offered to like give us something for free to do a giveaway when we had like 8 subscribers.
Yeah.
And they actually gave me all of their piano stuff. And some of their piano stuff. They have a
really
Yamaha
good.
upright. Unbelievable. Close your eyes, you think you're playing Yamaha.
Yeah.
So
I totally agree.
Good people.
Really good people.
Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous.
Well, taking care of instruments is actually not that hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I still do have my original guitar when I was still on tour, and that thing is like seriously beaten up. Because like falls off a stand and just like people drop it and just like
banging into things. When you're walking,
exactly.
Yeah.
Now, actually, the guitar I've been most enthusiastic about is the release of the Johnny Marr.
I love Johnny Marr. I'm a huge Smiths fan. One of our followers is a great guy. He's Johnny's sound man.
Try this one. Just like the action on this thing is like so incredibly great. Yeah, we can hook it up to the JC.
Well, Johnny will be. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You just have to play open string. You always sings when you've got that, you know what I mean? Well, better. That's instantly that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. Yeah, Johnny, I saw the Smiths in, I want to say, is it 83 or 84 at the GLC Free Festival in Jubilee Gardens, and I stood right at the front, and Johnny was playing, I think he was playing a Gretsch Country Gentleman through a JC 120. And Morrissey came out and he had daffodils out the back of his pants, and I remember like loving that show, and I had other friends that had gone to it, and I mentioned it in a video, and somebody directed me to a site, and there's photographs like literally taken from where I'm standing, and it just gave me chills.
Yeah.
It was on the first album, and I just remember nobody played guitar like that.
Yeah.
You know? It was either like rock or punk or whatever was around, but there was a guy who was like doing all these kind of all these kind of voicings, and he was listening more to Chet Atkins than anybody else. And, it's just so good. That was such a great band.
I had the great experience of actually working with him for the Spider-Man score. So Hans was the composer on that, and then Hans put together a band of guys that were playing on the movie. So it was me on bass.
Nice.
Pharrell was doing vocals. Johnny Marr on guitar. So Steve Lipson was mixing and producing everything.
Wow. Who was the drummer?
It was a session drummer from town. His name is Satnam. Amazing drummer. He works a lot with Hans.
Wow.
I've used him too. He's incredible. Like any instrument, like any percussion instrument, he'll just knocks it out of the park. So Johnny Marr on guitar, and so it was great. And he was telling me, it's like, I'm working with Fender to develop this thing, and then this thing came out, and then I just asked a store, like, hey, can you send me one out? And they sent the blue one out, and apparently what I read about them, they're all like super high quality. As with
unbelievable.
some of the other Fenders and Gibson, you go to a store and then it's like, this is not it, you know, but...
Set up so well. Did this come set up like this?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. It's absolutely gorgeous. And looks amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that too.
Yeah. I saw him, he played the Terragram downtown a few months ago.
Oh, yeah?
It was a great show. Like I said, one of our followers does this front of house, so we just sat in a little booth and just watched the show, and it was just so good.
And actually, what's funny, I met him before, but I didn't know I actually met him.
Oh, you didn't know?
No, because I was doing festivals with Junkie XL in the summer of 1999-2000,
Right.
And he was the guitar player for Modest Mouse.
Oh, I forgot he did that.
Yeah, and so we liked each other as band and bands, and so we were just having drinks and stuff. And I had no idea I was talking to Johnny Marr.
Yeah, I would have been like this. I don't know about you. Do you still get do you get starstruck every now and then? There's a couple of guys.
Yeah. So even meeting Johnny Marr and Pharrell in the same meeting,
Sure.
It's like, what the fuck?
Well, I think for our age group, Johnny Marr's like because he came out, because he was such a guitar hero without being a guitar hero.
Yeah.
He wasn't one of these kind of guitar heroes. He was like a musician.
But that for me was Andy Summers, the same thing.
Yeah, Andy Summers,
and the same with Robert Fripp to a certain extent, and also with Adrian Belew.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Three of a Perfect Pair? Forget about it. You do know that album, Three of a Perfect Pair? Go and buy it now. And Discipline. Oh,
yeah.
Those three albums with Fripp and Belew together.
Yeah, I was at a certain point in the...
Don't bury me.
In the 90s, I was in
the fretless guitar.
Yeah.
Belew's playing a fretless guitar. Check it out. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and then I was in a cover band in the 90s, a King Crimson cover band, and just to practice all these songs. It's like, holy
You're playing drums?
No, I was playing guitar.
You're playing guitar? Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
See if you remember this song. Let's see if I still remember it.
Yeah.
Remember that?
That's off Three of a Perfect Pair, isn't it?
Yeah, that's frame by frame.
Yeah.
And the way that Adrian Belew just like worked like
Yeah.
You know, and the other guitar player that I liked was the guy from The Fix.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like really heavy on the. Yeah, it's just like really great stuff.
Oh, it's amazing stuff. Yeah, Fripp, huge fan.
But I could
love
play
his stuff with Bowie.
But I couldn't play the Fripp stuff. So
some of that.
Well, that was doable. But then you like hit the patterns that he has.
Oh, and all this when he's always doing that. He's doing it. It's not just.
And what you guys have to understand, which is really funny.
It's just like
so Adrian Belew was the singer and the guitar player, so he was on front of stage and he was like all moving and being sexy. Robert Fripp would sit in the back of the stage on a bar stool with his legs crossed and just like that. He wouldn't move. He wouldn't move an inch.
Yeah.
And then you had Tony Levin playing licks on his Chapman stick while taking pictures of the audience with the other hand. And so he played like with one hand, just like tapping.
You got to go on You're on YouTube already, obviously, but go to YouTube. Any King Crimson live video from that period is just scary.
It's insane.
It's just how good they were.
Yeah, and they sounded as good live as on the record.
Oh yeah, I saw them. That period, I saw them a little later on when they had Tragon and Levin playing.
Yeah.
So you had like, that was when Levin was playing like a Music Man and then Trey was playing the stick.
Yeah.
And Bruford. And I mean, there's not a bad period. And you can go right back to the early stuff with John Wetton. Everything they did was just freaking believable.
In the Court of the Crimson King.
Of course.
Yeah.
There's something about this combination there. Either one should play arpeggios or prog.
Yeah, so this is a great company. Do you know this company?
No.
I want to just give a shout out to these guys. So this is Retro Mechanical Labs. So they buy old parts and then design new boxes. So, but what you see here is actually all like old material. That they find from old equipment, and then they make it to order. So this is a fuzz box with really interesting characteristics. I don't know. It's just a very sympathetic company.
It looks amazing.
It looks incredible.
That's gorgeous.
So the amp department. So this is my favorite amp. Oh, it's funny. It's like in front of the poster. So that is just this box right here. Now, this,
are you Antonius Toto?
Antonius is my official name, my passport name, and George always called me Toto. So
there you go.
So
Tom is Toto.
Exactly.
Toto.
And the other guy I was working with, my music editor was Bob, and his name was Bobo. So it was Toto and Bobo.
Toto and Bobo.
So this is actually my first Marshall successful buy. I've been looking for a good Marshall amp for many years. You know how it's so hit and miss with the 800s, but also with some of the other Marshalls.
Right.
And I'm not a big fan of all the new Marshalls that come out.
No, I understand.
But I am a big fan of the older ones, and I think I bought 10 or 15 of them on eBay over the last 10 years or whatever, or through different stores. And I always sent them back. It's like, no, I don't think this is it. And then I got this one, and it just, boom, just did it like right away. Like beautiful sounding. I don't know. Do you know why there's such a massive difference between the JCM 800s?
To be honest, I felt like, and this is contentious, I felt like the 800s were always hit and miss.
Always.
Yeah.
But if you look inside, because the tubes came separately packed, so I had to put them in. Right. And if you look underneath the amp, it's like there's barely anything in there. I mean, you know like why?
I found like they're all very, very bright, but some of them were so unbelievably bright. I bought one new when it was new, and I remember it was so bright I couldn't deal with it. And then I went and played somebody else's, and it was phenomenal. And I'm like, why is yours thicker than mine? You know. So I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. There may be different iterations that we don't know about. Maybe there's like a component change or something. You know?
Yeah, it could be a different transformer. It could be that they use different tubes.
But I also know that they sound, as far as I'm concerned, and this is probably going to start a whole massive discussion, they sound better in England than they do anywhere else because they have more power, more voltage.
Because of the 220.
Yeah, and that's what I've heard from lots of people.
Yeah.
That when you come over here, they always sound thinner.
Yeah, well, most European bands would use big transformers, right?
Yeah,
here, and so you have proper 220.
Yeah, yeah.
But if so, this is this one switches to there's a switch on the back. Like
they definitely sound totally different with the different because the transformers are being worked differently.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, so there's a sort of logic to that.
Yeah.
But what's that? It looks like you've got
that's
one of the
Jimi Hendrix.
Jubilees.
That's the Jimi Hendrix one.
Yeah, those are phenomenal.
This is fucking insane, like ridiculous. I have to say the bright channel is too bright for me, but potentially I could customize that. But this channel is all it's all about. It's really thick, and the amount of bass that comes out of this is insane.
It's probably just the whole thing. Just turn it up, yeah.
Yeah, I mean like
just brute force.
So when you switch it on and you just touch it, it's like holy shit! It's like a loud, clean sound coming out of it. But then when you turn it up, it actually doesn't really get that much louder. It just starts distorting. Yeah. And the distortion that you really want, you know.
It's in the power amp. The power amp is overloading. I think that was always the thing with the JCMs is like they used to maintain, at least they used to say that the distortion was created in the preamp section, then sent to the power amp section. I don't know if that's right, but that was always the theory. And on these ones, it was overloading the power amp section. Yeah. So it seems to always be thicker when it overloads.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know how correct that is, but... Yeah.
So when I got it in, I wanted to hook the thing up, and then I found out I didn't have a speaker cable that was long enough to reach the so I only tried this one. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Oh, so that's the picture of that drum recording, and I'm just conducting all these motherfuckers.
That's insane.
So that's Shula
there's Vinny.
Yeah, Vinny right there. Yeah. Let's see, Keltner is I think in there.
There's Keltner.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's Keltner. There's Vinny. Who's that?
I just have to check. Oh yeah.
Oh, that's Matt Chamberlain.
That's it.
Yeah, Matt Chamberlain, Vinny. I'm trying to think. There's a couple people I don't recognize.
Sheila E. So that's Satnam. The guy that's Trevor.
Talk about that for a room.
I know.
Here you've got Matt Chamberlain.
Yeah.
Like, these are the biggest session players around. Chamberlain, Keltner, Vinnie Caluta.
Well, and JR did like,
And JR,
did like Michael Jackson beat it, you know.
All in one room. Absolutely insane. All on drum risers. And they all brought their own kits, or did you have a...
Well, actually, some of them brought their own kits. Some of them was Drum Doctor.
Right.
So it's like a bunch of flight cases out here, and he was just like waiting in the outskirts. It's like if anybody needed anything. So yeah, it was an impressive session.
And where was this?
That was at Warner Brothers. So
that was the soundstage.
Yeah. So this was like 2 days of recording, and boy, my ears were just fucking bleeding after 2 days. It was like ridiculous.
What movie is this from?
Man of Steel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were they all playing different parts?
No, at the same, they were playing unison. So just like really create like a thunderous, mix of stuff. So yeah, there were closed mics, but it was all about the room mics and what they in the classical world they call it a decatry, which is like the 3 points.
3 mics, yeah.
So that was the most. Those were the most important.
That's what
mics.
I was impressed with Olga Fitzroy when she was doing the LSO. She had the decatry, and I was listening, and I was like, "How much are you listening to that?" And it was like this much, and. But all the accent and close mics were like barely in, and then you solo the decatry.
Yeah, the close mics you barely use. So the most important mics are the decatry, the far wide, and then the one completely in the back, which is then function as a surround sound.
Sure.
So actually, it's actually the mics work reversed. But
when you're dealing with classical musicians, they all know how to play with each other.
Oh, completely. So it's so incredible. I mean, like you played like the most complicated violin parts. You put it in front of 68 people, and they just look at it once, and it's like, okay, guys, let's go 1, 2, 3, and boom, and they play it or perfect in one take, but definitely in the second take. Yeah. And the sight reading capabilities is insane, and they've played on so many films. And it's like when you stand in front of a string group, you see like 68 guys, and you're just like, oh, it's a group, right? But each one of them spent 15 to 20,000 hours becoming that brilliant musician to then to then get to a situation where you get hired to be in that orchestra. So when you stand in front of 68 guys, you're talking 200,000 plus hours of experience in creating music. Yeah. And it's an incredible human capital, if you know what I mean.
Oh,
like it's like in the past when I produced bands, and you're doing this all the time. You work with this super talented guitar player, and just that alone, having an amazing guitar player in the room, it just fills the room with like energy and aura. It's just like, Jesus, what a player! What an incredible player! Yeah. But now you got 68 of those talented guys in one, and they all are. Virtuoso on their own, and then you see like the first violinist of the LA Philharmonic, which is considered one of the best violin players in the world. He just sits in the back, just playing second violin, just on the last chair in the back. That one of the best players, just sitting in the back. Yeah. And then you have Bruce Dukov, who is my concert master for film scores. The career that man has had, and the gigs he has done, and then. You have Caroline Campbell in there, who goes on tour with Sting and with Porcelli, the Italian opera singer, and all these people have like stories. It's incredible. And and then with the brass group, I had an incredible brass group. I had like brass players that played with Miles, and people that were the main trumpet guys is. Dave is considered one of the best jazz trumpet players alive nowadays. And he just sits there somewhere in a group of 30, just like playing the notes that I came up with, And it's an incredible group. And it's like all like a 1-2 takes. Unbelievable. Yeah, it's really, really fascinating.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I think that's the one thing that I miss about rock and roll for budgets. Is that there's less of that. We can't get into a room now and have people work on each other. Yeah. Because, those albums we're talking about in that period of like the mid-late 70s to like mid-80s, those, they were going into a studio for 9 months.
Yeah.
maybe they'd do it quickly and spend only 3 months. But it was like the drummer had a groove and you played to his groove, and it had to be tied to that. Now we're so used to aligning everything that it becomes one person's feel or one person's decisions.
Yeah, now it's like, you guys deal with it in Pro Tools, right? So, but I have to say, I do that too. Because I have a limited amount of time with this orchestra, because it's very expensive.
I can imagine.
For an average movie, the ones I just finished, Mortal Engines and Alita comes out somewhere in February. You're talking anywhere between $300,000 to $700,000 to record that orchestra.
Wow.
And so it's expensive, and still there's never enough time. I wish I had 4 more sessions. I wish I could do this. I wish I could do that. Right. So for me, it's very important that I consider the orchestra as like Tom Waits.
Sure.
Do you stop Tom Waits after four lines he sung? Hey, Tom, I think you're a little out of tune.
Yeah.
Shall we start over? No. You go for character. You go for performance. You go for energy, for charisma. Yep. And so I do the same thing with the orchestra. So sometimes after 2 takes, I say, okay, guys, we have it. And then you see like faces in the room. It's like, are you sure? And then, when I talk to the players, it's like, it's all about the energy. Right. If you can give me the maximum amount of energy that you have to play this part in the first 2 takes, I'll promise you, I'll make everything work. And you can make everything work. You have plugins now where you hear a full orchestra, but one is playing out of tune, and you can fix that within the recording. And you can fix timing.
Especially for orchestras, because, you understand the equal temperament. C sharp and D flat are 2 different notes.
Are not the same, and not in an orchestra. And now that I play violin, I actually know exactly what they're talking about.
You can hear it.
Yep, totally.
You can hear it as you go down.
I'll show it to you.
As you go down, it's a different tuning to when you come up.
Completely. I mean,
and each key has its own.
It's insane. I mean,
has its own intonation.
I'm a shit violinist, so don't. But anyway, so let's say we're on the. Okay, so we're on the D string. So if I were to play the major scale of D, so you see where my. But now when I play the minor. It's like, so the minor is almost like where the second is. And the third is almost where the fourth is. And the in between is just nothing. There's just like being out of tune. Yeah. Whereas on a guitar, that's like so remarkable because they're actually clear frets.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's what they call enharmonically the same. Yeah. So on the guitar, the C sharp is the same as the D flat, as it is on the piano. Yeah. Violin, no. Yeah. Basses, no. Yeah. Cello, no. Yeah. And it's really weird how it works. Right. And it works. And it's never out of tune with real Western music out there. It is microtonal, but it doesn't feel out of tune. Yes. Whereas like if we were to divide the violin up into different spots, like the guitar, it just wouldn't work. Yeah. It's incredible. Yeah. And now I notice that myself, even though I'm a shit player. Right. But I just have so much fun practicing and just, doing
it. It just challenges you.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked about this before, but like in, they're taking Alzheimer's patients now and teaching them music.
Yeah.
It's like it keeps our brain like so vibrant.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like music is math and math is music.
Completely. I totally agree.
Where'd you come up with Junkie XL?
Oh, my friends called me Junkie because I spent, too much time on making music, and then they would call me. It's like, Junkie, come on, let's have a beer. And then the XL stands for expanding limits. Oh, just like so, try to be open-minded, whether it's like socially, whether it's like music, politically. Just be open-minded. Makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, I think we can all learn to expand our limits a little bit. Thank you ever so much.
So good to meet you, sir.
Thank you. That was a lot of fun. Thank you.
And good luck with your channel.
Thank you. Well, we'll definitely be pushing people backwards and forwards to each other.
Great.
Thank you. Please, as ever, leave a bunch of comments and questions below. Thank you ever so much for watching. Have a marvelous time recording, mixing, composing.
Whatever. Thank you. Bye-bye.